In the 16th century, while Europe was drowning in religious wars, while men killed each other over ideas they barely understood, one Frenchman did something unthinkable. He walked away. He climbed the stairs to a tower, locked the door behind him, and decided to care about only one thing: understanding himself. His name was Michel de Montaigne, and he changed everything. Not by fighting, not by preaching, by not caring. And what he discovered in that tower is something the modern world desperately needs to hear. Michel de Montaigne had everything the world said a man should want: wealth, political influence, a respected name. He had served as a magistrate in the Bordeaux Parliament for 13 years, navigating the corruption and cruelty of French politics. And in 1571, at the age of 38, he made a decision that bewildered everyone around him. He quit. He walked away from it all. I retired to the bosom of the learned muses, where in calm and freedom from all cares, I will spend what little remains of my life. He retreated to the third floor of a tower on his estate. He filled its walls with books, over 1,000 volumes, and he had inscriptions carved into the wooden beams above his head. Quotes from the ancient skeptics, reminders to doubt, reminders to question everything, including himself. Freedom. The world thought he had lost his mind, a nobleman abandoning his duties, running from responsibility. But Montaigne was not running from anything. He was running towards something no one in his century had seriously attempted. He was going to study the one subject nobody dared to examine honestly. Himself. But why? What drove a man with everything to abandon it all? Before the tower, before the essays, there was Etienne de la Boétie, Montaigne's closest friend, his intellectual soulmate. They met when Montaigne was 25, and the connection was instant, inexplicable. Because it was him, because it was me. That was the only explanation Montaigne could ever give for their bond. For 4 years, they shared everything: ideas, dreams, the kind of friendship most people spend a lifetime searching for and never find. Then La Boétie died. He was 32. And something inside Montaigne shattered. He watched his best friend die of the plague over 10 agonizing days. He held his hand. He heard his last words. And when it was over, Montaigne found himself standing in a world that suddenly felt hollow. That loss carved a wound so deep that Montaigne spent the rest of his life trying to understand it. The essays, those legendary writings, they began, at least in part, as a conversation with a ghost. He wrote because the one person he wanted to talk to was gone. If Montaigne's journey is resonating with you right now, hit like and subscribe to keep exploring these hidden philosophical treasures. Because what he created next would change the history of ideas forever. Here's something most people do not realize. Before Montaigne, nobody wrote about themselves. Not honestly. Not with the raw, unflinching detail he would bring to the page. Philosophers wrote about God, about virtue, about the cosmos. Nobody wrote about themselves. Montaigne invented an entirely new form of writing. He called them essays, which in French simply means attempts, trials, not finished thoughts, not declarations of truth. Essays. Just a man trying to figure himself out on paper. He wrote about fear. He wrote about friendship. He wrote about his memory, which he admitted was terrible. He wrote about his digestion. He wrote about how his cat probably thought she was playing with him, not the other way around. He turned himself into the greatest experiment in history. 3 volumes, over 1,000 pages, all centered on one radical premise: that one ordinary man's experience, examined honestly, could reveal universal truths about being human. Every man bears the whole stamp of the human condition. This idea was revolutionary, and it was dangerous. Because if one man's honest self-examination could reveal truth, then what were all the authorities, all the priests, all the scholars even for? But Montaigne did not stop there. He asked an even more unsettling question. Montaigne had a medal struck with 3 words that would become the most liberating and most terrifying question in philosophy. Que sais-je? What do I know? Think about that for a moment. In an age when men burned each other alive over theological certainties, Montaigne stood back and said, "I do not know. I do not know." He did not say it from ignorance, he said it from wisdom. He had read the ancients, Seneca, Plutarch, Sextus Empiricus. He had watched brilliant men on both sides of the religious wars murder each other with absolute conviction, and he realized something devastating. Certainty is the most dangerous thing a human being can possess. The Catholics were certain, the Protestants were certain, and France was drowning in blood because of it. Montaigne chose doubt as his weapon against the madness of certainty. He applied this skepticism to everything: philosophy, medicine, education, even his own thoughts. He would write an idea in one chapter and contradict it in another deliberately, because people change, opinions shift. I may indeed contradict myself, but truth I do not contradict. And this leads us to what might be his most uncomfortable revelation. Montaigne wrote about things that would make his contemporaries, and honestly most people today, deeply uncomfortable. He described his bodily functions in plain language. He discussed his physical shortcomings with casual frankness. He admitted he was lazy, forgetful, and easily distracted. Radically honest, and he did this on purpose. He was testing something. He believed that if you could not be honest about your own body, your own failures, your own absurdity, then you could not be honest about anything. The first person you must stop lying to is yourself. While other thinkers presented themselves as models of virtue, Montaigne presented himself as an ordinary, contradictory, flawed human being. He admitted he was not the father he should have been. He confessed that he often could not remember what he had written just days before. He acknowledged desires that polite society pretended did not exist. He stripped away every pretense until only the truth remained. And here is what is remarkable: readers loved him for it, not because he was shocking, but because in his honesty they recognized themselves. For the first time, someone had given them permission to be imperfect. I have never seen a greater monster or miracle than myself. But his honesty went beyond confession. It became a philosophy of liberation. Here is something Montaigne understood that most people still have not grasped, even 5 centuries later. Almost everyone you meet is performing. They are wearing a mask not because they are liars, but because society has trained them to believe the mask is who they are. Your entire personality might be a costume you forgot you put on. Montaigne saw this everywhere: in the courts, in the churches, in the universities. Men who spoke of virtue while practicing cruelty. Men who preached humility while clawing for status. Men who claimed to love wisdom but were terrified of a single honest question. 1. They performed confidence while drowning in doubt. 2. They performed certainty while knowing nothing. 3. They performed virtue while hiding their shadows. And Montaigne refused to play the game. No more masks. He wrote openly about his weaknesses because he understood that authenticity is the highest form of strength, not the kind of strength that conquers armies, the kind that conquers the need to impress. He became free the moment he stopped pretending to be someone else. I would rather be an authority on myself than on Cicero. But Montaigne's liberation was not just psychological. It extended to a part of life most philosophers completely ignored. Most philosophers from Plato onward treated the body as a prison, something to transcend, something beneath the dignity of a thinking mind. Montaigne thought this was absurd. Absurd. He ate when he was hungry, he slept when he was tired, he enjoyed physical pleasures without guilt or apology, and when his body broke down, and it did severely, he faced it with the same honesty he brought to everything else. Montaigne suffered from kidney stones. If you have never experienced it, imagine passing jagged crystals through your body. The pain was excruciating. Doctors offered him remedies, most of them dangerous, all of them unproven. Montaigne studied them, examined the evidence, and concluded something radical for his time. The body often knows better than the doctor. He trusted his own experience over medical authority, not from arrogance, but from careful observation. He had watched doctors kill more patients than they saved. The arts which promise to keep our bodies and our minds in health promise us much, but deliver very little. Trust your body. He refused to separate mind from flesh. He understood that we do not merely have bodies, we are bodies. And this acceptance of physical reality led him to confront the one thing every body must eventually face. Montaigne was obsessed with death. This might sound morbid, but he had good reason. He lived in an age of plague, war, and sudden execution. Friends died young. Children died in infancy. Montaigne himself lost 5 of his 6 children before they reached adulthood. Death was not an abstract concept. It was in the room with him every single day. In his early essays, Montaigne followed the Stoics. He wrote that the purpose of philosophy was to learn how to die. He quoted Seneca and Cicero. He reasoned his way toward courage. To philosophize is to learn how to die. But something remarkable happened as he grew older. He stopped trying to prepare for death through reason. He stopped rehearsing it in his mind. Instead, he arrived at something far more profound. Acceptance. He realized that nature had already equipped us with everything we need. Peasants and ordinary people faced death every day without reading a single book of philosophy, and they handled it just fine. Death does not need to be conquered, it needs to be accepted. Live first, die later. The best preparation for death, he concluded, was simply to live fully. Not fearfully, not performatively, just fully. And this brings us to perhaps his most radical gift to humanity. While Catholics and Protestants slaughtered each other across France, the infamous wars of religion that killed nearly 3 million people, Montaigne remained independent. Not neutral, independent. Unchained Mind. He was Catholic by birth and practice, but he refused to hate Protestants. He served as a mediator between Henry of Navarre and the Catholic League. He dined with people who wanted each other dead. He walked between enemy camps as if ideology was a disease he was immune to. And in a way it was, because Montaigne had vaccinated himself with doubt. When you truly accept that you might be wrong about everything, it becomes impossible to hate someone for disagreeing with you. The chains that bind most minds are made entirely of borrowed certainty. He applied this mental freedom everywhere. He questioned European superiority after reading about indigenous peoples in the Americas. He challenged the idea that animals were inferior to humans. He rejected the assumption that his own culture was the measure of civilization. Each man calls barbarism whatever is not his own practice. 5 centuries before it was fashionable, Montaigne was practicing radical open-mindedness. And this leads us to the lesson that ties everything together. So what does it actually mean to master the art of not caring? Montaigne spent over 20 years and 1,000 pages answering that question. And the answer is deceptively simple. Stop caring about what does not deserve your care. Stop caring about looking smart when you could be honest. Stop caring about being right when you could be learning. Stop caring about impressing strangers when you could be knowing yourself. Stop caring about the performance of living when you could actually live. Just live honestly. Montaigne mastered not caring, but he cared deeply about the right things. He cared about friendship. He cared about truth, especially when it was uncomfortable. He cared about freedom, not political freedom, but the freedom of a mind that refuses to be enslaved by its own pretensions. The greatest thing in the world is to know how to belong to oneself. To belong to yourself is the beginning and the end of all wisdom. He did not escape the world, he escaped the need for the world's approval, and that made all the difference. If you made it this far, comment essays to prove you have started your own journey of honest self-examination. The wisdom of the ages is yours, use it well. Montaigne showed us that true freedom begins not with power or wealth, but with honest self-knowledge. Not the freedom to do whatever you want, but the freedom from pretending to be someone you are not. Know yourself, be free. His tower still stands in the French countryside. The inscriptions on those beams are still there, and his invitation remains open to sit down, to be honest, and to finally meet the one person you have been avoiding your entire life, yourself.